more than ever, us women are searching for ways to de-stress, concentrate, focus more on self-care and on healthy living. Nzingah Oniwosan is joining me now to talk about this. She's a holistic health consultant and vegan chef from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Nzingah, thank you so much for joining us here on BNC, and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and share some tips.
Well, Nzingah, before we jump into the wellness conversation, we know that you're Haitian American. I want to know your thoughts on what's happening at the border with migrants trying to seek asylum in the U.S. In what ways has the recent events in Haiti actually impacted the mental health of residents there?
Well, the border issue has been a long, ongoing situation. It's the new route for Haitians to come to the United States. And unfortunately, the situation in Haiti is such that a lot of individuals have found it easier for them to travel to other spaces. So a lot of times when we see people at the border, they're not necessarily coming directly from Haiti. After the first earthquake, or the earthquake we had about 10 years ago, they were able to travel to South America and Central America and start new lives. And those places have not necessarily been the best places for them. And so they've taken this trek from South America through Central America to Mexico. And so you're kind of seeing what's happening now. With respect to mental health, as someone who does have a business in Haiti and my ears on the ground, everything that's going on is pretty triggering, even for myself. You know, to hear that there was a second earthquake when the conditions right now aren't the best was disarming for a lot of us. And we realized that there were a lot of wounds that we still needed to heal that were very open, just masked by the needs of us having to survive every day. And so what's really been good this time is there are a lot of services on the ground with respect to mental health services. Places, Organization Santé Mentale is offering services, and we have hotlines in Haiti so people can call in and get those check-ins that they need.
And I imagine, I mean, they need it so much, because anything going through that, and we're talking about twice, would make anybody go crazy, right? And so going back to you, tell us a little bit about your wellness journey and why at such a young age you decided to change your lifestyle and become a vegan.
Sure. So I was diagnosed at a pretty young age with a brain tumor. I have what's called a prolactinoma. It's on my pituitary gland. I was 12 when I got diagnosed with that. And if you know anything about being tested, they'll test you for other things and maybe discover others. So then I was also diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. And very shortly after that, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder called scleroderma. So by the time I was 13 years old, I had this diagnosis and was told in order for me to live a long life, I would have to be on medication for the rest of my life. I had about 5 physicians, and it was pretty stressful, to be quite honest. And I was dealing with the stress of being faced with my mortality when I was supposed to be thinking about how it's going to be living. And then I was being stressed by the side effects of the medication that I was being placed on and the ebbs and flows of how it was impacting me physically as well as mentally. So 20 years ago, last month, I'm celebrating 20 years. I decided to do some research, and I felt like a holistic health overhaul would really change the direction of my life. And so through vegan lifestyle therapy, a lot of work, I've been able to reverse the symptoms from my tumor, from PCOS, as well as my autoimmune disorder, and not have to use medication anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it had to be tough. You're talking about as a kid, and like you said, you should be running around playing, whether it's on the football field or playing tag or something like that, and you were worried about those things, about how to survive. So what are some of the takeaways you got from your journey that you now share with your clients?
Sure. The first thing is that don't dismiss your trauma. Adverse childhood experiences are the leading cause for a lot of the things that we're experiencing as an adult. So what we call adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACE, is trauma that we experience in our childhood, abuse over sustained periods of time. Even absenteeism from parents can be traumatic, and those things can then be the catalyst for disease. And so that's why it's really important for us to seek therapy or seek a system that'll allow us to unpack those things. And that's often why, doing our healing on a physical basis alone is not enough, because we're not really going to the root of it. There's this African proverb that says, don't look where you fell, look at where you slipped. And sometimes we're looking at the fall in terms of a health crisis, but there were things that happened very long before, like in our childhood, that are having implications in our adulthood.
Yeah. And
so my first tip is if you can get therapy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. First tip is if you can get some mental help by way of a therapist or psychologist, please do so, particularly as people of color. Most of us can say that we've experienced some type of trauma in our life, and that's why we see the numbers that we see as it relates to diabetes, hypertension, and so on.
I would certainly agree. So I know that's at the top of your list, and I have my own therapist, so I take that advice to heart. And so what are some other things people can actually do that doesn't break the bank when it comes to self-care?
Sure. They can practice movement. I think a lot of times we think movement means that you have to do exercise, and that's not necessarily the case. You can get up and turn on some music and start dancing for about 10 to 15 minutes. And that just alone can have a significant impact on us our physiology, and it can reduce our hypertension. It can help us downregulate our stress. So simple things as moving, walking, dancing, doing household chores, gardening are great ways for us to start moving. That doesn't necessarily break the bank. Meditation is another thing that we can do as well. And there's different ways that we can meditate. One of the ways that I like to suggest is soft belly breathing. And that's where you take a deep inhale through your nose and then exhale through your mouth. And you do that for about 3 to 4 minutes, literally, and you will feel so much better because it's down regulating our stress response, our fight or flight, because the vagus nerve starts in our belly it's in our belly up to our brain. So by letting our belly be soft and breathing in and out, in through our nose and out through our mouth, then we'll be able to just manage. And it's a meditation that doesn't necessarily require silence, because that can be very hard in itself as an entry point for meditation.
Well, we are doing it with you. All right, yes. Nzingah, last question really quick in 10 seconds. Where can people find your self-care app?
Sure, it's 365zing.com. It's a wellness app to help women be well 365 days of the year.
Perfect. I'd love to have you back on my segment called Self-Care Saturday. Nzingah, thank you so much for your time and your advice. We're all breathing a sigh of woosah. Thanks to you. And stay with us, much more news ahead. Keep it right here on VNC.